Kirsty here from the Twinkl Homemade team. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on AR and 3D models. Now, if like me, until recently, you had no idea that Twinkl even did this, well, you're definitely not alone. It was a brand new one for me, but having had a little play with it and explore, I can see that this is definitely something you're going to want in your homemade tool belt to whip out and make a topic even more exciting and interesting. Luckily, you haven't got just me today. I'm definitely not the expert on this, but we are joined by Ross, who works with Twinkl and who was the person that created all of these brilliant AR and 3D models ready for you guys to use and play with. So Ross is going to take you through a little bit of information about the type of AR and 3D models that are available to you and all the practical stuff like where to find them and how to use them on different devices. So this is going to be really useful. Stay tuned. I cannot wait for you guys to see just how versatile these are. So I'm going to slide you that way and we'll head over and see Ross.
Hello, my name is Ross, and today during the course of this conversation I'm hoping to take you through a little bit of 3D and augmented reality models at Twinkl. So I'm part of the team behind them, and I just think they're an absolutely fantastic tool that you could add to your toolkit, and they're probably a bit easier to access and use than you might think. So I'm going to take you through a variety of different ways that you can access them and get your hands on them essentially, all from this tiny box in the bottom corner of your screen. So without further ado, let's dive in to dig into it a little bit more. So by the end of this, I'm hoping that you will be as excited about 3D and augmented reality as I am, and I'll let you decide by the end how excited that is. I'm hoping that you'll also have tangible things that you can try yourself in your own education journey. And by the end, you'll also know where to find our growing library of over 400 models. Yeah, there's a huge amount of models in all sorts of different topics, but I'm diving ahead. We'll find out more about that as we go through. So let's talk a little bof what 3D and augmented reality can add to your toolkit before we dive into how. One of these things, one of the areas that I think 3D and augmented reality is brilliant is that it can be a really hands-on tool led by the learner. And it really does allow, so for example, let's say you hand an iPad to whoever you're teaching the topic to, and allow them to explore a model that's totally relevant to what you're looking at. And it's fascinating to see where that self-led journey leads them to dive into. We've got the circulatory system here. You know, are they drawn to the heart? Are they drawn to the arteries, the veins? Where do they explore? Where do they look? In textbooks and in video resources, you're guided by the narrator, the director, by the choice of the author. With 3D and augmented reality, it actually puts the choices back into the hands of the learner, and they can really dive in and choose for themselves exactly how they want to approach learning this area. I think that 3D and augmented reality models encourage questions because you can look at the model from every different angle, zoom in, zoom out. You might have a question when the model first presents itself on the screen. Let's look at this circulatory system because it's here with us as an example. You might say, yeah, okay, but how does what's the connection look like between the heart and the lungs? Because it feels like an unanswerable question. Zoom into the model, spin it around, and in a few seconds you're starting to be able to answer your own questions. You can then take those questions that you think you have the answer to and dive into it in a slightly more structured way. You know, you can turn to a source and decide whether what you thought was the case was correct from looking at the model. But yeah, it definitely starts to give hints and clues. And another example of this is in historical artifacts. So we've got a brilliant Sutton Hoo helmet, for example, And the helmet just starts to give enough clues of how it would have been worn, what materials were used, but it doesn't truly give it away. And so, yeah, it allows someone to start to build a picture of what they think is going on before diving in a bit further and deciding for yourself. So finally, they are incredibly versatile. I'm going to show you 3 specific ways that they can be presented, but beyond that there's a huge amount that you can do with them, and I can offer some ideas, but what's particularly exciting is when someone sees what can be achieved with these and thinks, okay, this might be applicable for what I'm trying to do with this topic, with this area, and it's when you actually start to get your own ideas that are so relevant to what you're looking at in this moment. So let's move on to the next slide. So for anyone joining us, and there is that elephant in the room, what is augmented reality? It's definitely a jargon-filled word. So let's dive in. So good news is that you will actually be able to place an elephant in your room by the end of this this slideshow. So augmented reality, let's read down the column. So augmented, put really simply, is not reality. It means to mix something that doesn't exist with reality. And reality, your surroundings. Yeah, I don't want to dumb this down ridiculously, but I just want to show you where the root of this somewhat confusing word comes from, because it does boil down to, very simply, adding things that aren't real objects into your surroundings. Here's a great example. Here's a Viking longboat, almost to scale. I'll let you get the measuring tape out in your own local field or park to decide. But yeah, we've transplanted a 3D model of a Viking longboat that definitely does not exist in this field, and yet it is very lifelike and very convincing. So, you know, for anyone else looking at the field, they're looking at grass. For anyone looking through the iPad or the iPhone, they are seeing this 3D model projected into their environment. So hopefully this has already got the creative juices flowing for you, starting to think about, wait a minute, how could I bring that in? So in summary, I'm going to be talking about 3D and augmented realities. All of the models that I talk about are 3D. It's then by using a device, using the camera on that device, and it's an Apple device, and I'll talk a bit about why later, they become augmented reality models. So hopefully that clears up that question, and let's keep going. So first things first, we've recently worked on something which I think is really exciting on the Twinkl site, which actually allows you to directly launch the 3D models. This is a 3D viewer. What you're seeing on this GIF as it flies past is you can access the individual models. All of the ones that you can see here are 3D models. They're kept in quite nice, neat topics. And if you're on a desktop, you spot that button, launch, you click launch. And what you're seeing here, the hand dragging, that's actually, it's a pre-recorded video, but that was me controlling it. So with the left click, I can drag and spin it around. With the right click, I can pan it from side to side. And then with my mouse wheel, I can zoom in and out to get a bit more detail. If you don't have access to a mouse, if you're using a touchpad, then you can do the same with the left click and then use the touchpad to spin, as you're seeing. It's often 2 fingers, zooms in on the touchpad. Might be slightly different on your touchpad, but my point being that you can recreate and be in control, whether it's yourself or the learner. Like I said in the first or second slide, it actually puts you in control. The menu on the left, I've mentioned this in my top tip, it might be quite small depending on the size of your screen. My top tip, use the menu to navigate smoothly through different topics and find the right collection of models. You can find these through the search. I recommend, if you're searching for anything, type what you're searching for, so let's say human lungs, and then put 3D AR, and that will normally get you immediately to it. But if you've found a model already and you want to see more in that collection, that place is an excellent place to get. And what we'll try and do is this button here to enter the library. I tell you what, I will do it now. I'll pop on this, and what I'll show you is the quickest way that I navigate around the site to get to the 3D and augmented reality models. So what I do is I scroll to the bottom, and somewhere in this light grey footer, for me it's always in the centre, but if your screen size is slightly different, it might not be in exactly this spot. It's 3D and augmented reality models, and if I click on that, I'm taken to the home page. This is the URL if you wanted to hold on to that for the future. And yeah, like I mentioned, all of the topics here, it's very easy to navigate around. Let's dive back in, so I'll just close that. Just make that full screen again. So that's our library. That's how you can interact with them on the site. So immediately we've gone straight from how do I see this model to this is exactly how I can manipulate it, spin it and explore it. As you can see here, there's a view full screen button as well, which takes out any distractions from the screen. Okay, moving swiftly on. So that's a 3D model on the desktop site. I've mentioned there's over 400 of them, and it's also fair to say that all 400 of them are also available in augmented reality. Now, before I tap play on this video, let's talk a little bit about what I mentioned before, an Apple device. Now, it's an Apple device because of the underlying technology. So Twinkl's, wherever possible, doesn't tie itself to one technology, one manufacturer. We don't go around saying we're beholden to this, and this is why we do it. This is how we do it. There's no sponsorship or anything like that. But the technology that Apple uses creates the easiest way for you as a teacher, as a home educator, and your learner to access augmented reality. One thing I will say is if you don't have an Apple device, you can utilize the device that you have of an Android phone, for example, or an Android tablet, to access the 3D models and launch them on the site. I'll just flick back onto my previous slide. So you can actually navigate the website like this on an Android tablet. So you can get the 3D model experience. For the augmented reality, for the reasons I just mentioned, it's the Apple technology is the best technology for us to be able to deliver this for education right now. That might change in the future. Like I said, we're not beholden to it for any other reason than it works very well. So, augmented reality. These two bits of fruit are real. The red-eyed tree frog is not. And I'll just let you enjoy that for a moment. I'll loop it through one more time. So in this video here, I didn't have a measuring tape to hand, so I'm actually not sure if that's way too large for a red-eyed tree frog. That's probably something I'll let one of you dive into with a bit of research. Is my red-eyed tree frog way too large, or is it around the right size? I have a feeling, they often describe small animals in relation to thumbnails. I wonder if it's way too big. So my top tip for so many of these models, something quite interesting to do is measure out the real size of an object, then line up the augmented reality model. On the augmented reality, you can pinch to zoom, not pinch to zoom, pinch to grow or shrink. And by the time you've grown or shrunk, which is how I got the longboat stretched across the field, it's how I got this tree frog sitting on a desk. So that's augmented reality, and you've already seen with two examples, and they're very different examples, the Viking longboat in a field, so you're getting a real perspective, a real idea of size. Now let's take that one step further. Imagine I'd taken that to a large body of water, whether it's a river or the beach. I could actually have placed that same model into the water, and then again it's unlocking a little bit more contextual interest for what's going on. One thing I've also done is I've taken Stonehenge. I think Stonehenge is, if you can get, I'm going to take one step back here as well, and for a moment talk slightly philosophically about augmented reality. So I think augmented reality, as I mentioned, is a fantastic tool, but I think it's a fantastic tool when it's considered in a slightly nuanced way, which is, I think augmented reality should never replace something that is easily experienced by someone. So what I mean by that is, if someone lives 10 minutes away from Stonehenge, get to Stonehenge, experience Stonehenge, connect with the landscape. You know, do you feel the magic of the generations of humans that have stood at those monolithic stones before you? However, if you don't live near Stonehenge, and it's actually an incredible journey to get to, I think augmented reality creates an experience where you can start to connect to some of those feelings, which you wouldn't otherwise be able to do so with an image in a textbook or even some videos. So what I've done is I've taken the Twinkl Stonehenge model and I've placed it in the field, and I've grown it to the genuine size of Stonehenge, and I've wandered through Stonehenge in Sheffield. So that's my overriding point is augmented reality is fantastic, as I've mentioned, for creating experiences that would otherwise be difficult to create in the location or any other reason why it'd be difficult to create. That's where augmented reality really comes into its own. It's difficult to access a full-scale Viking longboat. Great, there's one on the site. It's brilliant for artifacts, and we'll talk a bit more about artifacts. So museums are fantastic. If you're near to a museum that happens to have a priceless treasure, brilliant, head over to that museum. But there's always factors that are built into that decision making. If you can't make it to the museum, and you know that we have one of the artifacts, we've got a great Sutton Hoo range, as I've mentioned, then it's a brilliant way to explore it. And actually, with augmented reality, you can explore the artifact in a way that something in a glass cabinet doesn't allow you to do. I did warn you about my love for augmented reality at the start of this. Hopefully you're still with me. Let's move on. So one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'll just flick back to the slides so that this GIF isn't too distracting as I talk about it, is some nuts and bolts. So let's say that you have some augmented reality models that you think are going to be perfect for your learner, and you actually want to curate them in a way that you're not just saying, right, 400 models, which ones do you want to try? Let's say you're doing a topic and you think there are 5 models here that will be ideal. So what I'm going to show you is how to curate 5 models when you're sat at your laptop or your desktop. You can pick the 5 models, get them set up, get them ready, and then what you can actually do, and I'll talk you through it in the next slide, is you can share a 6-digit code with the person that you want to access them, and that is going to take them into just that lesson. I think of it as a playlist, into that playlist that you've curated, and they will be able to access those 5 models. So let's head over to the next slide and I'll talk you through it. So the step number 1 for this, find a model that you think would work well for your topic. As you can see here, I've headed over to the Viking longboat. Oh no, I've changed my mind. I can't remember where I headed in this particular example. Okay, Viking longboat. You click through to the page. There's a top right heart. I'm going to let this GIF play through a couple of times as I'm talking. So if it's rushing away from you and you haven't quite got all of it, don't worry. I'll talk you through it. It'll play through again. It's okay. Don't panic. So find a model, as I mentioned. Once you've clicked on the model, you see the larger picture. We call it a preview, a Twinkl. You'll see a heart icon in a blue circle. It says save. If you click the save button, you will then be asked where you want to save it to. It's just about to come up again. So save, and then add to lesson is what you want to choose. Now, if you've never done this before, you'll want to add it to a new lesson. You want to create a lesson. If you have done it before and you want to add it to an existing lesson, great. So create your lesson, name it if it's a new one. Be sure that you click on the new lesson and see the green tick appearing so that you know that the model you've just chosen has ended up in the lesson. So I'll take a breath for a moment and we'll watch this play out in front of you. So behind the scenes, I'm opening these in new tabs. I'm saving it, add it to a lesson. I've got a lesson there called history. I've clicked that. I've closed it. I'm then going into my next tab. Here's a Viking, sorry, the last one was Viking. Here's a Greek vase, great for teaching about the Olympics. and now I've clicked edit. I've gone into share, and you tick the share the lesson icon, save it, and it's just about to now generate a 6-digit code. There's my code. That's what I can share. If I ask someone to type in twinkl.co.uk/share, they will then be asked to add a 6-digit code. Once they do add my code that we just generated, that's when they'll be met with that particular playlist. So I'm going to move on because I've got an example of how this then works from the other side, and I don't want you to get trapped in this loop watching this GIF for all of eternity. Let's move on. So here's one practical application of what I've just described, and I think it could be great fun to create a museum at home. So here's what you need to do to achieve this. You need to choose your model that you want to be one of your exhibits in your museum. Create a lesson and put just this one artifact into your lesson. And you'll see in the video that I've done that. What I then would encourage you to do, and you know, if you want to riff off this and go for something slightly different, be my guest. You know, the world is your oyster. What I did is I created a card stating what the object was, almost as, you know, I'm creating my own museum here. That's kind of the vibe I was going for. And I've also got the shared lesson code, so you might not be able to see it on your screen, but I'm just squinting and I can read gold belt buckle, Sutton Hoo treasure, 6th to 7th century, and then it's got the code ready. So the idea, well, I'll show you the video, no spoilers here. Bonus points for adding a QR code to that placard that you've created, because that would just save someone tapping around on an iPad or an iPhone. twinkl.co.uk/share. Let's dive in. To set the scene on the iPad, I'm already on the URL twinkl.co.uk/share, and let's see how I created a museum at home. So, gentle bit of commentary. This is the 6-digit code that I've generated. I'm adding it into the boxes where I'm asked. I'm then met with my lesson that's been created. There's one thing in there. It's the Sutton Hoo belt buckle. I tap download. It takes a second, but it starts the download process for augmented reality. It then asks you to move your iPad around to kind of orient it. It's looking for a flat surface, essentially. I'm then just slightly off camera, pinching to grow it larger to scale. At this point, I have a priceless piece of British history sitting in my front room, almost. So I spoke about this with some fellow Twinklies, and they thought it was great, but they said, well, so here's a second way that you could look to do this. They said, well, that's great, but what if you turned it into, rather than an information card, it was actually more of a clue. So a different way to create a museum, a kind of mystery museum, would be to create cards that have clues. So for example, I could have said, discovered in an archaeological dig, this priceless gold artifact changed the way that we viewed craftsmanship in the 6th and 7th century, for example. The lesson code then sends someone to a lesson to this playlist, that's my term for it, with 5 to 10 objects, for example. I think 10 might be the limit. 5 objects. One of them's a Greek vase. One of them is a Sutton Hoo belt buckle, etc. And it's down to the learner to decide what they think belongs on this museum exhibit stand, this particular clue. So there's a couple of ways there to create your own museum. Another kind of concept that plays on this idea is I imagine you could, we've got some great landmarks on the site, so you could kind of do an around the world in 10 minutes. Similar concepts, create a lesson playlist with landmarks, and then you could have stations where you can open up the landmarks, and there might be an element of resourcing, or I won't put too many words into your own mouths. You can decide for yourself what you think will work for your learners. But yeah, different stations where they can really start to access it. So that's kind of taking it from, if we take one step back, what we've talked through here is we've taken you from, okay, it's this thing that exists on the site, how do I use it, to suddenly here's something that I think you can take away and do immediately if you wanted to. I think the power is in your hands. So another way to use the 3D models that's brand new is, as you can see here on the screen, a selection of planet history PowerPoints now feature 3D models. Right now, at the time that when I'm recording this in February, they are in Great Fire of London PowerPoints, and they're also in some Stone Age planet PowerPoints, history planet on both sides. But there are plans in the pipeline for more planet history PowerPoints to feature 3D models as well. So it's something to watch out for in the future. One thing I'll say before I just share with you how it looks is I definitely see 3 levels of use or interactivity with 3D models and augmented reality in terms of how much you have a say in manipulating the model. So when using 3D models in PowerPoint, it's a very curated experience. It gives you a spin around of the whole model, so you can see more than you'd get from a static image, as I've spoken about before, but you're not able to zoom in, manipulate it yourself. The kind of journey is chosen for you. So that's level 1. Level 2, accessing the 3D model on the site through the 3D viewer. With that, you're in control. You can manipulate, you can spin, zoom in, zoom out, etc. Explore. That's level 2. Level 3 is augmented reality. You can achieve the same things that you can on the site. Zoom, I say zoom, you can actually walk up to it and zoom in, walk away from it to zoom out. You can grow or shrink the model, and you can travel around the model or spin it, but it's quite good fun to travel around it. That's level 3, and it's actually in your environment, so it adds an extra layer of believability and a contextual layer as well. So those are the 3 levels: PowerPoint model, model on site, and then augmented reality model. So let's take a quick look at the PowerPoint model. Obviously, if you were looking at this model, you wouldn't fly through it in the same way as I am. But I just wanted to get you to the bit that we're talking about today. If you want to explore prehistoric flint axes in more detail, you know exactly where to find it. But for now, we're just seeing how the 3D models can actually bring that topic slightly, I was going to say more to life, and what I mean by that is it puts it into a medium that we live our lives exploring. We're very used to exploring 3D objects, and this is a brilliant example. The Neanderthal campsite, a full spin. Like I mentioned before, it really gets you questioning and spotting new things, and there's clues hidden in throughout that about what more you can learn in various amount of topics. So that brings me to the end of that. Let me just check I haven't got another slide hidden. No. Okay, I'm going to tap us back to there just so the GIF isn't playing around in the background. But I'll finish off by saying thank you so much for sticking with me as I share my interest and joy for augmented reality and 3D models. I really hope that you'll come away from this just excited to try it for yourself. One thing I will talk about briefly before finishing: augmented reality and 3D models, they're challenging to create. We've got some very talented team behind the scenes working on these. They are an ultimate product, but if you don't have ultimate, around 5 to 10% of the models are free to try. And when I say try, you can use them exactly the same way as the ones that aren't free. It's kind of it gives you a chance to take them for a spin, literally in some cases. So don't feel like if you don't have access to ultimate, everything that I've just spoken about is you're not able to access it and try it. Definitely not the case. 5 to 10% of all the models you can jump on right now and try them out and do everything I've just shown you, whether it's a museum or just trying it on the desktop for the first time, etc. Hopefully I've covered everything that you'll need to get started. There is a guide, a membership guide for 3D models on the site, which I think also covers a lot of what I've spoken about as well. But yeah, all that's left to say is thank you very much, and I think that the Home Ed team will be absolutely thrilled to hear exactly what you get up to with this newfound power of your 3D models and augmented reality. Thank you very much.
Wow, mind blown. That was really brilliant. So I want to say a massive thank you to Ross for taking us through all of that. I think without him, I would definitely be a bit lost. So how are you going to use it all? This knowledge that's now at your fingertips. Who's going to create a museum in their living room? I can't wait to see what you guys get up to. If you have a little explore and a play with these, try creating that playlist as Ross suggested, or dip in and have a look at the Planet PowerPoints that he was talking about, and see how you could use them in the future. And if you do, make sure to drop into the Facebook group and let us know what you're up to. Feel free to post some pictures or videos of you with a T-Rex balancing on your shoulder, or your latest Roman find displayed on your kitchen table. Can't wait to see what you get up to. And thanks for coming along today and joining this webinar. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time.